You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Now, as Native peoples faced elimination and removal, a religious revitalization movement is going to spread across the land. It was known amongst American society as the ghost dance. Americans called it a ghost dance. But for Native peoples, it was a religious movement that was incorporated into numerous Native religions, Native belief systems. The ghost dance was first practiced among the Nevada Paiute in 1889. The practice swept throughout much of the western United States, and it quickly reached areas of California and Oklahoma. So as this dance, religious revitalization dance, spread from its original source, Native American nations synthesized selective aspects of the ritual with their own beliefs. And this process often created change in both the society that integrated it and in the ritual itself. Now, the chief figure in the movement was the prophet of peace, Jack Wilson, known as Wovoka among the Paiute. And he prophesied a peaceful end to white American expansion while preaching the goals of clean living, an honest life, and cross-cultural cooperation by Native Americans. So, I'm going to share with you a film clip on the ghost dance and the Wounded Knee and what eventually led to the Wounded Knee Massacre. But before you go to the ghost dance and that film clip, let me just share with you what the Wounded Knee Massacre was all about. The Wounded Knee Massacre happened on December 29th, 1890, near Wounded Knee Creek on the Lakota Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. On the day before, a detachment of U.S. 7th Cavalry Regiment commanded by Major Samuel M. Whitside intercepted spotted elks, or Bigfoot, Bigfoot's band of Minneconjou Lakota, and 38 Hunkpapa Lakota near Porcupine Butte, and escorted them 5 miles westward to Wounded Knee Creek, where they made camp. Now, the rest of the 7th Cavalry Regiment, which consisted entirely of recent arrived immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, they arrived led by Colonel James Forsyth, and they surrounded the encampment supported by 4 Hotchkiss guns. On the morning of December 29th, the troops went into the camp to disarm the Lakota. Now, one version of events claims that during the process of disarming the Lakota, a deaf tribesman named Black Coyote was reluctant to give up his rifle, claiming he had paid a lot for it. A scuffle over Black Coyote's rifle escalated, and a shot was fired, which resulted in the 7th Cavalry opening fire indiscriminately from all sides, killing men, women, and children, as well as some of their own fellow troopers. Those few Lakota warriors who still had weapons began shooting back at the attacking troopers, who quickly suppressed the Lakota fire. The surviving Lakota fled, but U.S. cavalry pursued and killed many who were armed. So by the time it was over, at least 150 men, women, and children of the Lakota Sioux had been killed and 51 wounded. 4 men, 47 women, and children, some of whom died later. Some estimates placed the number of dead at 300. 25 troopers also died and 39 were wounded. 6 of the wounded would also die. Now, it is believed that many were the victims of friendly fire as the shooting took place at close range in chaotic conditions. So now I'm going to send you to the documentary on Wounded Knee so you can learn what recruited immigrants to the U.S. Army recently arriving from Southern and Eastern Europe to America so audaciously performed on behalf of the nation's national interests. So please go and let's take a look at the Wounded Knee Massacre. Okay, so now we're back. Now, once the native nations are eliminated, the U.S. is going to begin to implement a policy of benevolence, because obviously genocide is not a nice word. So we're going to get a policy where assimilation is preferred. And we're going to end this session with you watching a documentary on how that policy was implemented. Because once the U.S. incarcerated Native peoples on reservations, a program eventually is going to develop whereby the children would be taken from their parents and sent to a boarding school. So in the documentary that ends this particular session, it's going to be known as In the White Man's Image. We're going to appreciate how the experiment in transforming Native peoples into white persons begins. Now, the best way to get a culture to transform, of course, is to educate the children in the history of the conquering society. So once you accept their version of your history, assimilation is complete. You are conquered. So an Indian boarding school refers to one of the many schools that were established in the United States during the late 19th century and early 20th century into the 1930s to educate Native American youth according to Euro-American standards. In some areas, these schools were primarily run by missionaries. Now, especially given the young age of some of the children that were sent to the schools, they have been documented as traumatic experiences for many of the children who attended them. So when you take a look at In the White Man's Image, you can appreciate what happened to the children at the first boarding school for them in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Now, as the film reveals, the children were generally forbidden to speak their native languages. They were taught Christianity instead of their native religions, and in numerous other ways were forced to abandon their Indian identity and adopt Euro-American culture. Now, tragically, many cases of mental and sexual abuse were documented. The forced boarding school era will come to an end in the 1930s. So I'm going to ask you to again appreciate in this film, pay attention to what happened to the students who graduated from the schools. Now, to conclude the presentation, this presentation with regards to in the 20th century, in 1924, Congress is going to grant Native peoples citizenship status. Under the 1924 Act, indigenous peoples did not have to apply for citizenship, nor did they have to give up their national citizenship or their tribal citizenship to become a U.S. citizen. The 1920 census revealed that Native peoples represented 0.5% of the total population. They were no longer a threat to U.S. society. They became mascots in the American imagination. And so I've just shared with you the journey that Native peoples had to face. And so one of the things in my shirt that I wore here is that no one is illegal on stolen land. And that's what we're going to understand in the 20th century. So thank you.
You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.